Hey, I'm Zarina Matcha, and you are watching Non-Feminist Gal. Cultural Marxism is a highly controversial and often misused term. It's a term that I have used a few times on this channel to refer to the ideas of critical theory developed by thinkers like Adorno, Foucault, actually pronounced Foucault, Marcuse, and so on. Contrary to popular belief, cultural Marxism is a perfectly legitimate term used by scholars such as Douglas Keller. While Marxism is an economic theory that examines how workers are oppressed by capitalism, cultural Marxism takes this one step further and analyzes how various cultures can oppress different groups, such as racial oppression, which is where we have critical race theory, gender oppression, which is where we have feminism, and sexual oppression, which is where we have contemporary LGBT activism. In theory, cultural Marxism is not a bad idea, as it attempts to examine how different groups of people have been oppressed under different systems. However, those who criticize cultural Marxism, such as scholars like James Lindsay, see how problematic social understandings can become when we look at people through lenses of oppression and divide people based on arbitrary groups that they did not choose to belong to. Before continuing, it should be noted that I am not a scholar or an academic. I am simply a girl on the internet stating her opinions. Please do check out the videos, papers, and books that I have referenced below to gain some more clarification on this rather misunderstood body of ideas. It is true that the Nazis and many contemporary alt-right thinkers use the term cultural Marxism as a dog whistle, claiming that cultural Marxism is a threat to Western civilization and that it is destroying white Christian values. While I strongly disagree with these views and am in no way affiliated with the alt-right, look at my skin color. In a horrible way, these people do have a point. It is true that critical theory was developed as an alternative to traditional Judeo-Christian conservatism. This is where the difference between left-wing and right-wing social thought is most evident. Left-wing social thought, rooted in Marxist-based revolutionary ideas, seeks to change society, usually through dramatic efforts, i.e. revolution. Such movements have been excellent and necessary in the past, such as the Civil Rights Movement. There are times when revolutionary movements are needed to liberate those facing genuine systemic oppression. Right-wing social thought, rooted in conservatism, seeks to uphold and preserve the social customs and status quo. This is why conservatives are often resistant to change. In some cases, this can be a good thing, such as wanting to preserve national and cultural identity, and in other cases, these can be extremely close-minded and in some extreme cases lead to xenophobia. A lot of racism, sexism, and other isms do stem from the hardwired tribal nature of humans and our desire to preserve what we view as familiar. Most people are neither wholly right-leaning or wholly left-leaning. Personally, I view myself as in the middle, as on some things I am leaning more towards change, such as wanting to legalize prostitution, and on other things I am leaning more towards conservatism, such as not wanting to erase the scientific definition of sex and gender. When right-wingers cite cultural Marxism as being a threat to Western civilization, it's because they are afraid of the change that this will bring. Personally, I'm not threatened by people being afraid of change. This is why I do not think that conservatives are bad per se, as most people do want to preserve and uphold their customs and traditions. This is a part of human nature. Don't particularly agree with it, but I understand it. What bothers me is when these are used at serious detriments to others, such as in extreme cases murdering millions of Jews. When alt-right wingers use the phrase cultural Marxism to justify murder or bigotry, this is where things become serious and dangerous. We are seeing the influence of cultural Marxist ideas espoused in contemporary Western academia. One example is gender studies, which examines gender through the theoretical idea that women have been oppressed by patriarchy, that gender is socially constructed and utterly divorced from sex, and that men have historically benefited from patriarchy by collectively holding all the power in society. Other examples include sociology, cultural studies, women's studies, and even disciplines like English literature. Cultural Marxist-based ideas are rooted in the deconstruction of modernism, which is why they often go hand in hand with postmodernism, even though the two aren't really synonymous. This is why I don't really agree with Jordan Peterson's term postmodern neo-Marxism, as Marxism and postmodernism are not really that intertwined, and I think it's better not to conflate the two. Postmodernism is all theory, while cultural Marxism develops theories through academic disciplines. Cultural Marxist ideas come under the umbrella of critical theory, which was created by schools like the Frankfurt School and the Birmingham School. All this was about examining how a white, male-dominated, cisgendered, heterosexual patriarchy had upheld structures for thousands of years and used this to oppress women, homosexuals, trans people, and people of colour. Such theories include critical race theory, intersectionality, deconstructionalism, and the like. Deconstructionism? There are some legitimately good ideas espoused by cultural Marxism. There's nothing wrong with looking at certain structures and how these have affected different groups of people. The problem is how simplistically these ideas are examined. Patriarchy theory is one good example. When feminists discuss patriarchy, they examine it through an incredibly narrow lens, which claims that patriarchal societies have been created to uphold a system which benefits men and oppresses women as the underclass. This is not only incredibly small-minded, it ignores all of the nuance within patriarchal societies, such as how they have benefited and protected women in certain areas, and how they have been used to allow both men and women to work together in their complementary gender roles. This also ignores the fact that most men in patriarchal societies, particularly working class men, do not hold all of the power in society. In pre-capitalist feudal societies, most social power was held by a small, wealthy elite, not by all men as a collective. I'm not saying that patriarchy is necessarily a good thing, by the way. I'm simply saying that feminism, and by extension cultural Marxism, takes an incredibly narrow-minded and reductive look at this. Patriarchy theory is a huge core part of feminism, and it is so simplistic. This is why a lot of people who believe these labels are so quick to label anyone who even utters the term cultural Marxism as some alt-right bigot. It's because of the lack of open-mindedness that buying into these ideas gives somebody. When we look at society through the lens of various groups of oppressed people, all it does is dramatically simplify human beings and the differences and nuances between us all. When everything becomes a systemic issue, the idea of variety and individual freedom is taken away. If you want to get really philosophical, this almost becomes very free will versus deterministic. Whether free will is an illusion or not, the fact is we act based on the idea that we have free will, and this is what allows us to not be sucked into the idea that systems are rigged against us. I don't think that it's helpful for Black people in the UK to believe that the system is rigged against us, as this will prevent us from wanting to work hard and better ourselves. If we can blame everything on the system, then there is no need for any inner work. This is why the belief in free will is actually better for society. We must believe that it does, so people feel motivated to achieve their goals and dreams, otherwise people will become jaded and complacent. Furthermore, cultural Marxist ideas are pretty flimsy due to the simplicity of them. It's far too reductive to claim that women have been collectively oppressed throughout human history by the patriarchy. This ignores the nuances within societies and aspects of societies where women did hold power, such as in the home or in certain industries. Moreover, while the transatlantic slave trade was a horrible, evil thing, humans throughout history have owned slaves. African Americans are not the only social group of people to ever have been enslaved. In the modern age, they have been, but if we look at the span of human history, slavery has always existed. Humans have always oppressed and owned other humans to some horrible degree. Cultural Marxism is an ideology which greatly simplifies human history by reducing things down to white people bad and Black people oppressed. Human history spans over 1 million years, and far too much has happened for us to make such sweeping statements like X people have been oppressed since the dawn of time. For most of our human life, we lived as hunter-gatherers, and then we entered into an agricultural age, an industrial age, and we are now in a digital age. Compared to the length of the universe, we really haven't been here for that long, and there is still far so much that we don't know. Cultural Marxist ideas ignore the wider scope of humanity. They simplify and reduce us to only looking at ourselves through the last maybe 200 years or so. And they are heavily Western and Eurocentric. Japanese cultures probably wouldn't fit into the cultural Marxist narratives on race, gender, and the like. We cannot base the entire narrative of the world on the standards set by Europe and America. Overall, cultural Marxism, or critical theory, is a decent idea on paper, but in my opinion, these ideas have done far more detriment than good to society. As an artist, I'm seeing the practical application of cultural Marxist ideas espoused in the arts, such as with sensitivity readers in literature. This is the idea that if a white author is writing a black character, they should hire a sensitivity reader to check that they have not written the character offensively. This is rooted in identity politics, which comes from cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism should not be seen as a dirty word. I'm sure plenty of people out there could and do identify as cultural Marxists, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's like being a neoconservative. They're not plotting to take over the world, they're just creating theories that I and many others disagree with. But what do you think? Has this video helped clear up some misconceptions you've had about cultural Marxism? Do you agree or disagree with cultural Marxist ideas? Let me know below. Thank you for watching.